Signing for Sky Sports. All right, you're back with the transfer show. Arsenal will kick off their Premier League season at Manchester United on Sunday. Mikel Arteta has brought in 6 players already this summer, including an out-and-out striker in the form of Victor Gyökeres. So, are they done? Well, our reporter Gary Cottrell has more.
A busy 10 weeks in the transfer window so far for Arsenal. They brought in, haven't they, about half a dozen players in every position: goalkeeper, defence, midfield, up top. So will they be cutting back? Will they be trimming the squad? As you can see, the gardener is doing to that bush there, trimming that bush back. Will players be trimmed from the playing squad at Arsenal? Well, of course, I think there will be players moving out, players who are back from being on loan last season, players who perhaps are now a little bit surplus to requirements. Reiss Nelson being linked with Fulham, Zinchenko, whose minutes last season compared to the season before were very limited. Vieira was out on loan, wasn't he, last season? Now back, expect him to go out again. Trossard, Leo Trossard, that's a difficult one because, of course, with all the changes, with all the players that have come in, he might find getting a start, getting many minutes with Arsenal more difficult than he ever has before. But he could bring in good money to the club if they do want to strengthen any more, balance the books a little bit. Although he is a popular player with Mikel Arteta, a good squad player, versatile, always willing to come in and do his very best, even if he's not in the starting lineup. And then Gabriel Jesus, what about his future with the arrivals that we've had at the club? Still injured, of course, still not back from that injury he picked up in January. But is there any mindset for him to leave the club and find football elsewhere when he is fit and playing again, if he is fit and playing again before the end of the transfer window? And in terms of ins, well, Eze, that name won't go away, will it? Particularly with the changes that Crystal Palace will now have to make to their planning with the news today that they're not going to be in the Europa League. They won't get the money into the club that they thought. They can't offer the standard of football in Europe, certainly, to the players that they've got. So would that make it more likely that Crystal Palace would sell some of their stars, including Eze, and Arsenal, we know, very interested in that player?
Gary Cottrell there. All right, Dharmesh, of the names that Gary mentioned, who are the most likely to leave Arsenal?
I can't put like a which is more likely or not. All of them could leave if they get the right offers. Gary made the point about Alexander Zinchenko. I think Arsenal would listen to suitable offers for him. Fulham are still pushing to sign Reiss Nelson. That one is definitely still on the table, even though it has taken quite a while because we've been talking about that for the best part of 6 weeks. Stuttgart still pushing to sign Fabio Vieira. Sambi Lokonga, surplus to requirements at Arsenal. And Gary made a great point there about Leandro Trossard, because I don't think Arsenal would actively look to sell, but it might be in Trossard's head, Gyökeres has arrived. Sometimes they play me up front. Well, I'm further behind the pecking order there. I was usually the first choice, maybe, when Martinelli wasn't playing, to play on the left side. Now Noni Madueke can play all along the front line. So maybe he might look at it himself with 2 years left on his contract. Is this the time maybe to go? Look, Arsenal beat Athletic Club on Saturday. Reiss Nelson, Lokonga, Zinchenko in the squad, unused substitutes. Trossard and Vieira not in the squad at all.
Yeah. Gary mentioned Eberechi Eze. Do we think that could happen?
Look, it's difficult at the moment because I think the focus at the moment is on sales. But I think what Arsenal want to do is be in a position that if an opportunity comes along, that they are in position to be able to act on that opportunity in the final 3 weeks. And Arteta has said it already, even after the games in pre-season. The noises he's making is that maybe they haven't finished in this window. There's been, we spoke about Rodrygo from Real Madrid earlier on in on the show. He's another player that Arsenal have kept an eye on throughout this transfer window as well. So it might not just be Manchester City, but Arsenal looking at what Rodrygo potentially, because of that area that they want to strengthen.
Sure. Well, Arsenal could come up against Benjamin Sesko. Nice to have you with us in the transfer show. Right, Crystal Palace have lost their appeal against being demoted from the Europa League, and so they'll play in the Conference League this season. What's the knock-on on transfers? That's what we want to know. I'm going to throw some names at you. Mark Gay.
Well, look, you heard from the Palace chairman yesterday, Steve Parris, speaking at Wembley after they won the Community Shield. Mark Gahey has 1 year left on his contract. Now, Palace need him either to sign a new contract or they will reluctantly have to sell him this summer. Does that mean that a club is going to be able to sign him on the cheap? No, I don't think it does. We know clubs in the past, like Newcastle, like Spurs, have been interested in signing him. He's been linked with a move to Liverpool as well. I still think it's going to take big money to sign him.
But Palace can't let him go for free next season, Carve.
Well,
they can't play that game.
But look at it from the player's perspective. Just because Palace want to sell him, it doesn't mean that he has to leave Palace. Because maybe he's thinking, I would rather wait until next summer when I'm a free agent, because we know big clubs in Europe are willing to sign him as a free agent next summer. So it's an interesting situation. I think Steve Parish is pretty realistic. He knows there's a lot of interest in Mark Gahey. To be fair to Mark Gahey, I don't sense he is a player who is saying to Steve Parish, look, we've lost this appeal, we're going into the Conference League, I'm too good for the Conference League, I need to be playing Champions League football. He's not that kind of player.
But he could be playing Champions League football's the point.
Well, he could if a club make a good enough offer to tempt Crystal Palace to sell him. Crystal Palace have to be realistic. But Steve Parish, I've got to tell you, is not an easy person to negotiate with. You know, people have tried signing players from Crystal Palace before and have found it very, very difficult. My sense is, at the moment, though, Steve Parish is realistic. He knows that time is running out in the transfer window. Palace are not in the Europa League. Players need to come in, and maybe one or two players will have to leave as well.
Yeah, as you say, he's not an easy man to negotiate with, but he hasn't got the cards with that one. Has he got the cards with Eze?
Well, he does in the sense that Eze's got longer on his contract. So Crystal Palace don't have to sell him. He had a release clause in his contract, which I think has now expired. Now, I know a lot of Arsenal supporters, they would love to sign Eze in the next couple of weeks.
The player.
He's a fantastic player. I think Arsenal, my personal opinion, they've had a fantastic window as well. They've made some incredible signings. Signing Eze would be the icing on the cake. Of course, he was at Arsenal when he was a kid as well. But I think it's going to cost big money, and I don't know if Arsenal are going to make the kind of bid that is going to tempt Crystal Palace to sell him. Again, look at the scenes yesterday at Wembley. Look at the way Eze celebrated with all his teammates. Look at the unity within that squad. He's not a player who's ringing up Steve Parish today.
Arsenal could explore a late summer move for Real Madrid winger Rodrygo if they are unable to sign Eze, according to Court Offside. The Emirates side have reportedly identified the Brazil international as a potential alternative to the Crystal Palace attacker, who has been heavily linked with a move to North London in recent days. Mikel Arteta is expected to bolster his attacking options with another name before the deadline and are long-standing admirers of Eze, who has entered the final 2 years of his contract with Palace. However, any move for a new attacker would likely require Arsenal to sell one of their current forwards, as both Noni Madueke and Victor Gyökeres have already joined this summer. According to Court Offside, Rodrygo is considering the possibility of ending his Real Madrid chapter before the transfer deadline on the 1st of September, with interest building rapidly across Europe, particularly from the Premier League. The Brazilian winger is facing a difficult battle for regular minutes in Xabi Alonso's squad next season, as the Spanish tactician is willing to give more game time to emerging starlets Arda Güler and Endrick instead. Alonso hinted at Rodrygo's diminishing role at the Club World Cup last month, as he fielded the Brazilian just 3 times and opted for Güler in the first 11 on a regular basis, with Rodrygo amassing just 92 minutes of action. Rodrygo still has several potential landing spots in the Premier League this summer, as both Liverpool and Tottenham are tracking his situation, while Manchester City are also known as long-standing admirers.